Oh, it's thinking about it. Hello, let's try this. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 5th industry interview with Cornwall Film Festival. My name's Henry, and we're going to start in just a minute. And today I'm joined by Andy. Now, Andy, one question I didn't ask you when we were chatting a minute ago. How do I say your surname? I don't want to get it wrong.
Well, I don't mind if people get it wrong, but generally it's De Emmony.
De Emmony. So Andy De Emmony joins me today. And we are, for those who don't know Andy, he's a TV and film director. And he started his career in Spitting Image, and he directed 10 series. Is that right?
Yeah,
10 series of that BAFTA-nominated satirical show. He then went on to direct some iconic episodes of the sitcom Red Dwarf, winning an Emmy, and Father Ted, winning a BAFTA. He's also had other work, including Moonfleet, Stan Lee's Lucky Man for Sky, The Last Kingdom for Netflix, and most recently, for those watching on the BBC, The Nest. Now, he's also boasts, a few films in there. West is West was his first feature, which was released in the UK and worldwide. And after that, the horror comedy Love Bite, which I did see some imagery for, and looks quite funny. And then most recently, 4 Kids and It, which is an adaptation of Jacqueline Wilson's book. And of course, we were talking to Delith Thomas last week, who's did a lot of work with Jacqueline Wilson's Tracy Beaker series. So hello, Andy.
Hi, nice to be on. Nice to meet you.
Now, we've just got to put a little caveat in here that both of our internets are struggling today. So if we suddenly stop and freeze, we are still here. We promise. It's okay. Just a reminder as well, if you want to submit any questions to Andy today, you can put them in the comments for this feed. And do give us a like or a heart if you like what we're saying. And do feel free to tag people who you think are missing out on today's broadcast. And let us know where you're watching from. So I'm obviously in Cornwall. Andy's up country, as you might say. But if you're watching from anywhere else, do give us a shout. Ooh, I don't know if that's me or you pinging Andy. But
sorry, that's me. But
it's absolutely fine as long as it's not me missing something that's going on. So Andy, let's kick things off. We've talked about your credits, but how did you get into film and TV?
Initially, I went to art college and was a sculptor. And through my sculpting work, I got involved in a bit of model making and that sort of thing. And then they were setting up a workshop for Spitting Image. And I went initially as a sculptor. But thankfully for me, there were much better sculptors there as well. So they took me on, but I ended up working, making puppets, painting, doing all sorts. And they eventually, back in the time when TV had a bit more money, they sent me to film school. And I came back from that and then stayed with the series for 10 years, directing that. And that was a great hothouse for comedy, really. And with a lot of new writers, new performers there, Steve Coogan, Harry Enfield, lots of great writers. And I went on to do various sitcoms with writers from there, like Red Dwarf, Robin Doak, Maylon Grant, and Father Ted. And so I did a lot of comedies from there. And that's how I sort of got my in. They sort of knew me from there. So I managed to get the sitcoms. That progressed. I eventually moved into dramas as well. And I sort of slightly alternate between projects that are funny and projects that are serious. And I quite like the mix of the two, really. And I think I got into the industry in a time that was much easier than it probably is now. I think you come in through various routes now. I think it's more competitive, certainly.
And for those people who are watching, do you want to tell us a bit about Spitting Image? Because it's obviously it's one of those shows that was kind of a leader at its time.
Yes, well, it was at the time we didn't really know how lucky we were. That 2 men, Roger Law and Peter Fluck, set it up, Fluck and Law, and they initially did sculptures for illustrations for newspapers and that sort of thing, mainly political, satirical pictures. And they got the offer to do a puppet show. John Lloyd, who'd done Blackadder and lots of great things, he came in to produce it, and we made a series of puppets, and we were making it up as we went along. But there was something about sort of grotesque look of these puppets that became incredibly strong, and they became slightly more lifelike than the real people. And it became competitive, politicians sending in photographs, wanting to have puppets made. And at that stage, it was fairly anarchic. We should have been sued lots of times, really, but I think we would always go for anyone that threatened us, really. There was a point I remember Andrew Lloyd Webber telling us to stop defaming him. So we just put him in the back of every scene, writing his name on something. There were lots of things like that. And I suppose it just built up. At that stage, we were all very young, and they ran it like an art college, really. And we made puppets, and at the weekends, we went and made this TV show. And it didn't feel very different until that sort of finished, and we all had to get proper jobs and transfer into the real industry, and it was all grown up and a bit more serious. But it was a great start. And that program ran for a long time and became this sort of Sunday night fixture, just bringing down the politicians a peg or two. Whether we ever made a difference, I'm not sure. We might have made Thatcher arguably more famous than she was, but it was a great time, and there were lots of great political figures to make fun of. There's a move to bring it back coming up soon as well. I don't know if you saw in the press. It's sort of been put on hold again now, but the intention is to bring it back towards the end of the year.
And I think there's some great material in there at the moment, I think.
Yeah, there definitely is. So I think it would be a ripe time for it. But that was the genesis. And I think that was my lucky break. I think everyone that gets into the industry somewhere gets a lucky break.
And then at that sort of early time in your career, do you have anyone who's influencing you, or sort of aspired to be at that time, or the shows that were making you go, "Ooh, I want to work on that"? Or
I was always, great film lover, all classic directors on that end, and I ultimately wanted to move towards film. I suppose I always liked the comedy, really, and so from even down to Red Dwarf and Father Ted. Red Dwarf had already started, and I knew Rob and Doug, and so I just hassled them. And once there was an opportunity, I went in and directed. So I suppose I've always loved the comedy. I think life is funny, and comedy bleeds off life and gives us that relief is great. So anything funny, I love. Grew up on Animal House and great American comedies of Airplane and that sort of thing. I think it's to me, it's harder than straight drama to do great comedy, and a great comedy film is a work of genius. We were just watching Life; they were incredibly funny. Yeah, so
I think Andy's talking about Life of Brian.
Yeah.
Are you still there, Andy? Can we hear you? Can you hear us?
Sorry, I've lost you there a moment, but hopefully you'll be back.
He's back.
Yeah.
So it's going to be some sort of comedy double act, I think, on this today. Whilst we're talking about Red Dwarf, we'll talk a bit about that, because I know Sally, who's online now and works in the CFF office, is a massive fan, and I think lots of other people are. So give us a little like on the stream if you're a big fan of Red Dwarf. So Red Dwarf is another one of those shows that's made sort of a bit of a resurgence sort of recently and has been picked up again. Now people can watch the entire 10 series. What was it in the end, or 8?
Yeah, maybe more than that now.
Maybe more now. Oof.
Yeah.
So how did you first get involved in Red Dwarf then? Just badgering people you knew?
Yes, I knew Rob and Doug, and I already loved the show. And I knew Ed By, who was directing it at that stage. He went off to do something else, so I was just hassling him a lot. And I sort of knew that it's a small family really there. And I think the show at that stage went from strength to strength. Such a strong following. The audience warm-ups were not normal warm-ups. They were asking trivia questions about the show. When did Lister lose his liver? And everybody knows. So it was a strange and very loyal audience, which is, I think, why it's managed to keep going so long and has a resurgence now, because that fan base is so strong. A cable channel like Dave was on and say, okay, if
we've gone a bit Red Dwarf for our space transmission
to the channel. Sorry, did I go again there?
Yeah, go. We'll go for a second take on that one, Andy.
Hello.
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 We can
Hello.
hear you. Go for.
Sorry?
Tell us about Red Dwarf and how about the audience and the engagement.
Yes. Well, I suppose it had such a strong following then. And it was a brilliant balance between sci-fi. One of the writers was brilliant sci-fi.
No, I can't hear you. I'm going to make up what you're saying, I think, at this point.
Bring it back so successfully, because that's such a law. You can or can't.
But we could there. I think we'll move on to the next question. Otherwise, we'll repeat the same thing continuously. We also comment actually that an actor locally called Richard was in Red Dwarf in the early days, and I think he seemed to enjoy it. And people love the character Cat. So, how do you work when it comes to those character-driven projects?
Well, if it's well written, the jokes themselves are tied into the characters. It's not just a series of jokes you could dole out to different characters. They're specific, and that was what's so clever, And in something like Red Dwarf, each character had such strong traits, that very clearly that line could only be from the cat, who was stupid and vain, and the logical Crichton, the slob of Lister. So immediately you keep playing that, but the jokes are so clever and so specific, and we did it with a live audience, so we were able to keep, if a joke didn't work, they would write something live on the moment, and we just tried that in with the audience until we got something to work. But because they're so clear, such clear characters, it's quite easy to get the right material for that, and voice and jokes that could only come from those characters.
And do you think that's worked, so that transitioned across to when you did Father Ted, in that same sort of way?
I think, bizarrely, for me, they were very similar shows. Writers I knew, incredibly funny. To a certain extent, as a director on something like that, I mean, there's a certain skill to directing comedy and the timing, but all you've really got to do when the script's so good is not mess it up. And as long as you don't mess it up, it'll be great. And so Father Ted, again, by the time we got the scripts, they were 15 to 20 drafts. They'd gone through and meticulously honed every last syllable. So then all you've got to do is play it well. And we had such great cast for that. It was a joy. And you spend all week laughing while you rehearse, all through Monday to Friday. And the Friday night, you get an audience in and record it, and your week is done. It's a beautifully simple system.
That sounds quite fun. I like the live. I didn't realise that Red Dwarf had a live audience. I'll be honest. I just, didn't really occur to me.
Yeah, but it's funny because there's a certain amount of pre-recording. We go into different planetary locations and that sort of thing. We used to shoot it at Shepperton, and we would piggyback sets that had been built for bigger films. So if there were a medieval castle set being finished, they'd write something for next week for that castle, and we'd visit a medieval planet somewhere, and whatever the storyline would evolve. So you do a certain amount of pre-recording that's played into the audience, but everything in the main body of the ship plays live with an audience. And to be fair, the actors in both Red Dwarf and Father Ted are comedic actors, so that they really feed off that live audience moment as well.
That's quite cool. So does that mean then, I guess, unlike today, where a lot of series, the plot is laid out, everything is done well in advance, you had quite a lot of freedom there. So each week could be different, going in a different direction, depending on what set was available.
Exactly. And you adapt things on the day as well. We'd be running live a scene that runs into that scene, and that didn't end with quite the right upbeat for the next downbeat. So they literally give us 2 or 3 lines, we pass it through to the actors, chat about it for a couple of minutes, and then run it again. And that would be that end to the scene. So you can be very reactive on those sort of things, especially it's multi-camera, you've got 6, 7, 8 cameras, whatever. So you can cover material really quickly, and you're doing the whole thing in a sort of 2-hour block. So being able to take 10 minutes and rework something and refit it and run it again, it's very easy.
Well, sounds quite exciting. So now, of course, we talked a lot about your comedy, but Andy has got quite a drama CV, particularly recently. So do you have to take a different approach when it comes to those dramas that you do?
No, I suppose for me, it's always reacting to the script. I think, if I'm really honest, I think the best drama has a certain amount of comedy in it. I think in those tense and darker moments, the human condition makes fun of those things. And so I like a bit of that humor as a release valve on serious things. I did a single film for the BBC called God on Trial, which was set in Auschwitz, based on stories from survivors that they held a trial and put God on trial for breach of contract to the Jewish people. And it was quite theological and intense piece we did. And one of the survivors saw it, and he said, well, where are the jokes? You know, because half the room is being killed in the morning. And that's what brings about this trial. And I said, well, we just didn't think it was that sort of material. And he said, oh, we laughed all night. You know, they told jokes and they laughed while they did this trial all night. That might have been hard to put onto TV, but I think it indicated that even in the darker moments, we laugh. So I like to switch between the two. And really, it's about good writing and truthful writing. And I think even with the comedy, best comedy is still based on something real as well. And to be able to get something funny within that reality is great.
And then when you actually are on set with your actors, do you ever give your drama or comedy actors more freedom to I guess go with something either way?
Yes, I think there are times when there's a particular rhythm to a punchline, and you might get that, and the actor wants to have a play. And I think sometimes you have to keep an environment that allows a bit of space for that playfulness and a bit of improvisation. Some writers are not very keen, but there's no harm in shooting it. And there might be moments where you get a funny little beat that you hadn't anticipated because the actor's found something. So I think you have to leave a bit of space for a bit of improvisation, a bit of playfulness, whilst coming in with a definite plan. You know, this is how I'm getting from here to here, and this is how it's going to work. But if they can offer you something better, I think it's great. And you have to definitely be open to that. It doesn't matter whether that idea comes from the runner who's just started the day before, or an experienced actor, or anybody. You suck that stuff in and you use it where you can. You have to be open to it. Yeah.
No, it sounds, it makes perfect sense, because I think everyone has a valid input. It's just how it comes across at that time.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it can't go too far. I mean, in the film with Russell Brand, not live too far, but
better get onto that one. So that's led us on quite nicely. That's a nice link. Thank you, Andy, for my link there. And I thank everyone for the questions that are coming in. We will be asking Andy some of those shortly. We'll try and work them into conversation. There's lots of love out there for your work, Andy. People do like it.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to, for those who haven't seen, 4 Kids and It is a film, as mentioned earlier, an adaptation of the book by Jacqueline Wilson, which Andy directed, and I believe was supposed to have cinematic release.
Yes, it was supposed to be going out on Good Friday, but obviously with the virus, that went by the by.
No, so you can now watch it on Sky Cinema. But we're going to start off with a pressing question that I prepped Andy for, so he said some time to think about this. The book itself is set in Cornwall, the beautiful Cornish coastline, the sea, the sun, or the sand. But the film itself filmed in Ireland, another beautiful place, but not Cornwall. So, Andy, maybe tell us a bit about the project as well, but why did you choose to film in Ireland?
Well, to be fair, it wasn't necessarily a choice. We did go and recce in Cornwall, and I holidayed there a lot as a child in Polseth. I remember surfing in freezing cold water. But we did recce there, but unfortunately, as with most strange decisions in life, it comes down to money. And different regions give you different tax breaks. And Ireland gives you a very good tax break. It's not just money, because there are centres of production. Like there's a lot of crew and people who live in Cardiff working. So if you can be within half an hour of Cardiff, that also works. And you can get financial subsidies for shooting in Wales. Dublin has a lot of crew, and you can get out to great landscapes within less than an hour. So the beaches we shot were near Dublin, and they were literally 20 minutes from town. So financially, you're not spending lots of money putting crews in hotels. They're driving from home to work and you're shooting. So there's a certain amount of practical nature of being near a production centre. I've just been shooting in Glasgow on the Nest. And again, you've got to be able to reach the locations from the city very easily. So there's no production base in Cornwall. So it means you've got to put everybody up. Combine that with the tax break. I mean, it's bizarre because Cornwall is so beautiful. Really, they should be offering much bigger tax incentives to get people to go and shoot in Cornwall. I know a friend of mine writes Poldark down there. The nature of the scale of their production means between that and things like Doc Martin, there are more and more crew beginning to live in Cornwall. I think a lot of the crew on Poldark sort of live there for the whole period of time. And it's beautiful because you can sort of semi-holiday. But for a small independent film like ours, too expensive, unfortunately.
Well, big shout out to all the Cornish crew who are out there, and everyone else. But it's an interesting part of the industry, though, to actually look at all the logistics that go into filmmaking, because everything has an impact, really.
It's interesting. We're talking at the moment within the industry a lot about how we can be greener as an industry. And a lot of our costs are travel and fossil fuels and that sort of thing. So we really need to bring in legislation that stops that and that forces us to control how we shoot in mileage terms as well. Because we control production and all sorts of other reasons as well, having to make things sure they're regional, the spends right in the different areas, all that sort of stuff. So more restrictions, we're used to it. And it will become a bigger part, I think, of what we do.
No, definitely. Well, anyway, but off the slight political topic of finances and logistics, how was the film to make? Because as you mentioned, Russell Brand does star in this film. And you've got four children, and Michael Caine doing a voiceover as well.
It was yes, it was everything in the kitchen sink, really. It was part of what appealed. I've done a few projects now with children. I'm sort of interested to work with them to find a space that they can be quite real in. So not stage school kids and not all teeth and smiles, but trying to get them to exist in that space a little bit and be real. So I was fascinated with that. And with this, it's a range of age groups from 12 to 9 to 5. So you've got to find different approaches to working with different ages. Throw on top of that all the special effects, from the magic that happens in the story. Plus then we got Matthew Good, Russell Brand, and Michael. Michael we filmed for a few days. He did the voice and we motion captured him for the creature. So we filmed his face in a lot of detail, the bodily movements, the hands, and those all translated across into the creature. So to me, it always looks a bit like him as well. And we did sort of model some of the facial elements through him. So he was fascinating. And then on set, we had a puppeteer and a robot version of that creature, but with Michael's voice playing out of it. So the kids could always have something to actually react to with the creature, which was great. And then we had Victorian versions of those kids as well. So there are a lot. And we did a sort of open policy on children, really. So we had siblings on set a lot, families, parents and everything on set. So we generally had a creche running and a play tent going most of the time. So it was a very enjoyable shoot. A lot of challenges. We had to shoot on beaches, and the story is all dependent on, hopefully this isn't a spoiler, but you get wishes, but they only last till sunset. And the stories that grow from that. But that means sunset and sunlight becomes incredibly important in what you're shooting, which is really hard, combined with there's a lot of restrictions on the hours you can work children, which is a good thing, but it does make a lot of problems for how you tie that up with shooting sunsets and helicopters and all sorts of different elements with those timescales. But I like the challenge. And then within the middle of all that chaos, you're trying to create a little world in the middle that is real and they make sense to each other. And you're telling a story, because no one will ever really see all the mechanics of the special effects and everything on the outside, hopefully. And you're telling that human story about families in the middle of it. And I quite like the challenge of all of that. So yes, it was good fun. We managed to get very good weather for most of the time. And interestingly, you were talking about Moonfleet, which was a thing I did for Sky with Ray Winstone as a smuggler. So we had to shoot in Ireland again for the same tax break reasons, but we were looking for smugglers' beaches, which are hidden little beaches. So I'd done the whole sort of coast of Ireland a couple of years before looking for them. So when this came up, we needed to find a secret beach that you couldn't access apart from through a tunnel. It was immediately the place that came to mind. We did then go around and look at lots of others as well, but we kept coming back to the same beach. And actually, it's the same bit of beach we shot with Ray that we shot the children on. Very beautiful part of Ireland.
Very famous now. But in real contrast to that family movie, which you can watch on Sky now, you've just done The Nest for BBC, which is something very, very different.
Yes, still a family drama.
Still a family drama.
But yes, I guess with all these things, it's just an intriguing story. And I suppose we probably all know somebody who's struggled with fertility or getting pregnant or those sort of issues. And it's really nice to find a way of telling that story. Again, not many people have the model family now of 2 kids, 2 parents done. Everybody's, slightly dysfunctional in their way. And I think this explores a different version of the variety of family lives now. And great script to be, getting to play with. And I think as with 4 kids, if you've got a good script, it draws in good actors. And
one thing we're really hearing over the last few weeks with all these interviews with directors is that script and story is just so important and so easy to overlook actually as well.
Very true. It's not just, we're talking about this today with something we're trying to cast. It's not just a good story. You've got to look at good characters and their journeys through it, because an actor will only look at that from their part. And there are some great stories that I suppose a lot of cop shows are similar, that the actors are functioning a story and then not necessarily take much of a journey themselves. So I think what I look for is interesting parts in interesting stories. And certainly when you're watching things, I think you remember characters and their journeys rather than particularly complicated plots. So it's a funny balance, but you need the 2 elements really, the story to work to take you through, but also these great character parts that you'll be able to get a good actor for because they want to play those scenes and go through those journeys. So you've got to look at both a little bit, but I think that combination is what you're all looking for.
Mm-hmm. There you go. So anyone who is a filmmaker who's out there or a writer, you're not just looking for one thing. There's all these things that feed in to making a project. Great. So Andy, we're now moving on to the question and answer session, not from me but from other people. So I'm gonna, people at home, I've got 2 laptops here, so I'm sort of looking down, checking out all your commentary. The first one we got is, how long did you spend prepping for 4 Kids and It?
4 Kids and It. And most projects work in thirds, really. A third of the time being prep, a third of the time being shooting, and a third of the time being post. So 4 Kids we shot for 10 weeks. So I think it was about 10 weeks prep. Having said that, we were trying to raise the finance on that film for about 2 or 3 years, no longer, many years, but getting close to shooting for about 2 or 3 years. So you end up doing quite a lot of prep anyway, and we'd storyboarded it, we'd designed the creature, we'd done all sorts of things before we got to that prep. So in the end, that preparation was about the fine detail of the locations. And I like to do a lot of rehearsal. So I then had the kids for 2 or 3 weeks before the shoot as well, getting them to know each other, how to work with them, assessing what you could do with them and how they behave together. So eased yourself in, but generally it works in thirds. And likewise then the third to shoot. I think we carried on editing for a bit longer, but by that stage it's only like 2 of you in a room. So it's quite a cheap part of the equation, but generally splits in thirds, yeah.
Okay, well, it's all about the planning, all about the planning. A very quick one for you then. Which do you prefer, TV or film?
Interesting. A few years ago, I'd have always said film.
Yeah.
But I think TV is going through such a golden age at the moment. And I think because the bar is being raised all the time, the quality is raising all the time. So I think we're now getting, and there's a lot of film people coming into TV as well because of that. But I think we're starting to get much stronger material. And you can't necessarily play safe anymore. You can't do cop and a sidekick and know that that'll do pretty well. It's got to be really strong. And so I think people are being much more adventurous in their commissioning. The programs are making being much bolder, and you know you've got to hit the ground running. You know, if you don't get people in that first 20 minutes of that first episode, it's not going to work. So there's a lot of skilled application going in, but I think it's more the variety of scripts. I think we're getting such good material through now. I'd probably say film is, I think it's changing. You know, our ability to go to the cinema may change anyway for a while, and I think people, it's already become the sort of more the event in the cinema, and you know, very hard to get a two-handed love story in the cinema unless you've got Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep or something. So I think the opportunities are stronger on TV, and I think the materials easier to get projects that are interesting on TV because they haven't got to hit a box office weekend that becomes a big ramp to hit. So you're throwing everything from A-list celebs and so on at that box office weekend where something can grow on TV.
Yeah, I remember I saw something the other day saying one drive-through in America currently makes up the entire box office weekend for the States at the minute. And it was something like $600 is it, which is quite funny. That kind of, at the moment, there's nothing.
I missed the beginning of that. Just
so there's an article that recently came out saying the entire American US box office for the weekend was just one drive-through cinema.
Wow.
Because of course there's nothing else on.
So that industry, even the virus itself will make a big shift, I think, to how we work. I'm sure the cinema industry will recover, but I think I was reading Netflix have put another 16 million viewers on. So TV is definitely in a resurgence, and we're all lapping it up. And I think the quality, we used to always say there's nothing on. Now there's too much on.
So I mean, I find it hard to try and choose what to watch now. I have watched 4Kids in It though. I did my research.
Well done.
So I've got some questions about your early career.
You may be not the target.
Oh, there we go. Your early career. Did you when you came into TV originally, have things changed a lot? The lessons you learned then still the same? And did you ever end up shadowing anybody, sort of following a director around?
Yes. So the last bit again.
Did you ever end up following a director, shadowing them whilst working?
There was a wonderful director, Lydia Oldroyd, who did Drop the Dead Donkey and a couple of others. She was one of the first directors at Splitting Image, and she sort of took me under her wing and engineered my first break, actually, when she was supposed to be directing, and she primed me and then was ill. So I had to step into the breach. So yes, she was terrific. What was the other part of the question? Sorry, first bit.
Have you any lessons that you kind of learned that are still the same today?
I don't know. I think it's, you've got to make yourself invaluable. I guess don't be very good at making the tea, or else you'll keep making the tea. No, I don't know. I think it's making the most of the breaks. And in the end, I think it's luck. An opportunity will come up. I think there are probably a lot of Scorseses out there who are working in a hardware store, in a hairdresser's, who will never get the chance to see that. BFI run a thing called the Film Club, where they send different directors into schools, state schools. This is just to try and show to people that these are career paths you can follow. It's quite a middle-class industry in some ways, I guess. So trying to make that opportunity available to everybody. So we get stories from everybody, and those stories that appeal to everybody. And so I think it's seizing the opportunity is key. For me, literally, I was living actually in a squat, I think, at that point, and somebody wanted a 15-foot toothbrush for a commercial.
Okay, of course.
And we'd all done mold making and stuff at college, so we sort of knew roughly. And we sat around making this thing for a few days, and we thought we were going to get a few $100. And I remember we got this big check for it. And that made me think, well, maybe TV is a good industry to go to. So we then went into a bit of model making and that sort of thing for TV. But I think it was easier. Now I think lots of colleges have set up film and TV departments, some practical, some theoretical. So I think there's a lot of people coming into the industry, and there's a lot more people fighting over any opportunities. So I think people have to keep very resilient, keep going, keep plugging away to get that break. And when you get the break, go flat out. It's definitely a hard industry now. I think I know a lot of people. I get a lot of contact by a lot of people looking for ins or experience or mentoring. So you do everything you can, and it's finding those moments, and I guess you see when somebody's got some talent. I think the one plus side to the competitive nature of the industry is, I think if somebody has got some talent, they rise quite quickly.
So the main thing is they don't have talent for making tea, though, is key.
Yeah. I think that's yes. My son was a runner at one stage, and I remember giving him that advice because he didn't like making tea anyway.
So that's a key point of advice, really.
Yeah,
I think
it's seize the moment.
There you go. So everyone watching, if you are making films, want to work in film or TV, it's all about seizing the opportunity when it comes along. Now, thank you. We've got a question from Angela. It's quite specific, so I've got to bear with me whilst I read it out. So it's about the nest. Cool. And you have sweeping aerial shots of Glasgow, and they do feature heavily. And it's quite obviously Glasgow is quite an important part of the story. Do you find that if you'd done it in another city, it would be more difficult to get those sorts of shots?
No, I don't. I think the difficulty is finding those iconic views. I mean, anyone that knows Glasgow knows we shot in one particular area with their O2 dome, the crane, the wonky bridge. So it's a quite iconic view. So I think wherever you go, you find those bits that are iconic. And I guess I'm in love with drones. I've got lots of drones and I've crashed lots of drones. I think they're a great filmmaking tool, not for just huge aerial shots, but moving in amongst action and so on. And I think the writers from Glasgow, and she was very keen that we place it as Glasgow. And it's a very vibrant city. They're building everywhere there. And it's also a city of contrast. So we're able to sort of fly around that and pick it out. We're also using a new camera, a newish camera that's very good at low level light levels. So we're strapping a Sony A7, which is a very fast camera, onto a drone. So it's not a normal drone situation, and shooting at night. And it means the whole thing can pop for you. You see much more with the camera than you can with your own eyes. So it felt quite dark and dingy for us, but the footage you were getting back was fantastic. And I think it's become a part of every decorating show, every news item. And as a filmmaking tool, it's taken over from cranes and a lot of things. We don't use cranes anymore, really, because we've got a drone that you can just take out of the box and go. I think it's probably we're developing a grammar for using that flying camera as we go, and it's becoming a more and more important tool. And as you say, in Glasgow, we only did a couple of days shooting with the drone at the house and the water and over the city. We were able to use those all the way through the show, really. So I think it becomes a very powerful tool, and as a filmmaker now, you've sort of got to engage with it, and you can do it for nothing. A few £100, you can buy a drone that you can broadcast, TV quality images from. So it's opened it up for a lot of people now.
So obviously, if you are flying drones, please fly them safely and legally and away from airports.
Yes, yeah. Interestingly, you have to be very clever to fly it near an airport anyway, because they automatically block on the software of the drone. But yes, you have to register and be careful.
Yeah,
but everybody has to register now to fly. Yeah.
We had George make a comment saying he's a second-year student and he's going to make sure that he makes mediocre drinks in future. So your advice has been taken to heart by the next generation.
Perfect. Yeah. They'll give you something useful to do if you don't make the tea.
Fair enough. We're sort of coming towards the end now, Andy, of our live broadcast, but a couple more questions for you.
Sure.
The sort of standard ones. what's coming up next?
Well, we finished the Nest by remote. I think the sound department moved all their equipment into somebody's shed. We were doing the sound mixes by remote and actors' additional dialogue by remote. So we only just got that one in. And I was starting prep on the Larkins reboot, the Darling Buds of May, which we're still doing bits of work for, but hoping to get started when the industry picks back up. But yeah, so Darling Buds of May, set in Kent, which should be Simon Nye's writing it. It's a great writer, so it's very full of warmth and charm. Might be just the antidote everybody needs at the end of this virus.
Hopefully, I think if I recall, David Jason's in the original. Is he in that one? Is it that the?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, I think the conversation, somebody I think chatted to him about doing a cameo for us. I don't know whether he will, but it would be lovely.
He was doing something on the internet recently. I think some kind of something. He's always out there doing different bits and pieces. But so that sounds quite exciting. So hopefully this lockdown's lifted soon for you, so you can get filming over the summer. Yeah,
we're hoping to get going again in July. So fingers crossed, I guess. We shall
Definitely
see.
Fingers crossed. And one sort of wrap-up question then. So aside from work, Andy, when the lockdown is lifted, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Oh, go to a pub.
Go to a pub.
Pint in a pub. That'd be really nice. But that's the only thing I think. Even when they break the lockdown, I don't think we're going to run around and hug everybody. I think it'll take a little bit of warming up time for us all to get close again.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be a big thing of people getting used to the idea of being out and about again and with people.
Yeah, it will be a strange reconnection.
So Andy, if people want to get in touch with you, can they do that? What's the best way to?
Yeah, I guess Facebook. There's an Instagram I'm on. And I've got an agent as well, if anyone wants to, independent.
Cool. So we'll put Andy's agent's contact details up in the description after this, but you can also find him over on social media. We've got a final one.
I said budding filmmakers, any short films you want to send me, or script writers, now's a good time because I'm doing lots of reading because nothing else to do. But
get in whilst you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, Andy, thank you so much for your time today. I should also say, Andy's also, if you want to get deeper into Andy's experience, he is running a masterclass with us on Friday, the 1st of May. And we'll put the ticket link in the comments here as well. So that's going to be really interesting. So we're going to dive a bit deeper into how you can work with actors for both drama and comedy. So for actually, let Andy explain. Why am I doing the talking? Andy, you can explain this It's your masterclass.
I know. I think for some, I would consider myself a performance director. Some people might think themselves an action director or whatever else. So I love that interaction with actors and putting them in a world and a story and a place that tells that story. And I think it's one of the things that's not talked about very much. A lot of people talk about directing technically and shot patterns and how you tell the story, but getting inside there with actors and finding those magic moments, it really exists in the eyes of the actor. So I think it's a fascinating area that I think you can tell a brilliant story with a face without needing much money as well.
So definitely think anyone who's directing, producing, and maybe even some performers who are interested should definitely try and come along if they can. It's going to be a good one.
More the merrier.
Yeah, well, Andy, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching today. Thanks for all the likes and the comments and the questions. It's been wonderful. If you're watching the recording and you've got this far, thank you very much. It's been really good. Do feel free to add a comment as to where you are watching from. I haven't got a subscribe button, but you can like the Cornwall Film Festival page. And join us next week for another interview, except we're moving away from directors next week. We have casting director Debbie McWilliams on, who, for those of you who don't know the name, she has cast a variety of big films, including the last 13 Bond movies. So it's going to be interesting talking to her about her very long career in casting. So I'm going to go offline now. So thank you very much, everybody. We're going to end this live video and have a lovely week.
Thank you. Bye-bye.